refrigerator. And, the other thing he left was an Appian Way pizza box. So I don't know if you heard of Appian Way, but Chef Boyardee makes these pizza boxes, right? It's a box, has a can of sauce. I think it has dough in it, maybe some yeast, I don't know. And then you buy your own cheese or whatever. And basically, you could make a pizza out of it, right? So I learned about making Appian Way pizza, and we ate Appian Way pizza forever after that. And the beer was there, right? So one night, I'm like, gee, the beer's been in there for weeks. Maybe I better try. You know, I was a 14-year-old kid. I said, everybody drinks beer. I ought to try it. So I opened up this beer, and I drank it. And honestly, I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. I thought, I can see why people drink beer. It didn't turn into some kind of a love affair, but that was my very first experience with beer, just having stuff that somebody left in the refrigerator at my house. So, and it was Stroh's too, a Detroit brand. Always had a soft spot for Stroh's ever since then. So,
very nice. So, I mean, I ask everybody, what was your gateway craft beer, but you were raised in a time where craft beer wasn't happening for the longest time. When did you eventually discover craft beer and you were like, oh, I think I could do this?
Well, I think for us, it wasn't craft beer. It was imported beer.
Right.
Craft beer didn't exist. But imported beer sort of was like the predecessor to craft beer in the U.S., So we had Whitbread. I mean, there were a lot of craft beer. Heineken would be the most domesticated of those, but we had Whitbread Ale and Bass Ale and, of course, Guinness. Those were available, time immemorial. You could get those anywhere. There was a time when you couldn't get Coors beer where I lived, right? So a friend of mine had a beer can collection when we were kids. And if you had a Coors can in your beer can collection, you were like hot stuff. It wasn't widely available in our part of the country like it is now. It's kind of funny.
Yuengling was that way for us. Yeah, we had the same thing with Yuengling. Like we just got Yuengling, I think, within the past 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. Oh, you mean in Dallas? I thought you mentioned it from Pennsylvania, and it was just regionally available in Pennsylvania. I'm sure that was the case. But, Mickey's Big Mouth, I remember those you couldn't get, there were a lot of things that domestic brands that just, they weren't available. And now domestic brand, you can pretty much find anything you want almost anywhere. I mean, it has changed dramatically in the course of my lifetime, the availability of beer and then the explosion of craft breweries. I got into brewing at the end of my residency. It became legal in Oklahoma to brew beer sometime in the late 80s. It wasn't legal before. And in fact, Oklahoma still has weird beer laws, like you can't buy regular strength beer in a normal, like a grocery store, but you can buy 3.2, they call it 3.2 beer, and it can be cold. If you buy regular beer, regular strength beer, you have to buy it at a liquor store, and it can't be cold. They can't keep it cold or whatever. They have to just store it on the shelf. And
They just changed that actually.
Oh, they did. Okay.
Yeah. So I was working for a distributor when it all changed, and we had a lot of people from Oklahoma come down and try to see how we were doing things. Yeah, you were right. The way they used to do it was it was like 3 point something beer you could always get cold, but if it was the regular version of that said beer or any other regular beer, like you said, it was in a liquor store on the shelf, room temperature, it couldn't be cold. But now you can buy beer and wine in the grocery stores finally, and it's the way it should be. Is the best way to put it.
Well, Dallas had, Texas was weird too. Garland was dry.
Yeah.
You could.
Yeah, we had a lot of blue. My dad would always tell me about like the blue laws and the certain counties were dry, and it was like, it just made no sense to me.
I heard this. I don't know. I always tell this story. I'm not 100% sure it's true, but somebody told me. But when I first moved to Texas, they said the year that I moved, they said you're allowed to have open container in the car, and you can be the driver and drinking one, provided you have one hand on the wheel. And that just sounds stupid. And then the next year, somebody told me, "Oh, well, they changed that. Now you can only have open container in the back seat."
Right.
And then the year after, I don't know if these were true or not, honestly, but I always tell people that that's what I had heard. So
I imagine in parts of Texas that was very true, and I imagine that's also still how the way people function in certain parts of Texas.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I heard about people in Texas, the way they drink wine is they tear the cap out of pull the cork out of the bottle and throw the cork out the window. So that's the way you drink wine in Texas. Oh well, I enjoyed my Texas. Made a lot of good friends down there. Enjoyed being there. Texas is is one of the great states of this country.
It is, and there are a lot of weird backwards laws and why certain things are or not legal. And like, I don't know why I can carry a sword around in public and it's legal, but if I wanted to, get or buy liquor on a Sunday or even in a grocery store, I cannot do that. It's very weird, and there are certain things that I kind of wish would change.
Yeah, well, I'm sure.
But I imagine everybody in every state has that.
Yeah, you're right about that.
So how did you guys end up in the Pittsburgh area?
Well, that had to do with the training, medical training. You get into medical school, which is competitive, and then you choose a residency, and depending upon what kind of residency you're trying to do, those can be not competitive or extremely competitive. So, urology is kind of somewhere in the middle. And if you go through a program called a match, and it's a way that you go and interview at programs, and then you rank the programs, and of course the programs rank you. There's only a certain number of positions available. So just because you say you want to go to University of Michigan, for example, and do urology doesn't mean you're going to get in there, because they may only have 3 spots at the most. Most other programs are going to have less. And then they have a national day where the match is done. And that's where the mathematics is done to see, to try to match up as best as possible the people that were ranked the highest, that ranked that place the highest. And so I mean, there's usually 600 or 700 applicants for about 230 spots. So
wow.
No means there's a guarantee you're going to get in by doing it. It's tough. So then when you match, that's pretty much a contract that you're going to go to the program that you match at. So if you're from Michigan and you interviewed in Hawaii, you're going to Hawaii if you match there, right? Now, some people think that there are problems with the match. In other words, there's backroom deals get made, even though they're not supposed to make backroom deals. And then people wind up, like, well, we really like you and we know you, we want you to come to our program. And then they wind up, of course, getting into that program. So, and there's efforts to try to control that or whatever, but, so I think, it's very likely for the average Joe that doesn't have any kind of a connection, they're going to they don't know where they're going to go until they have this match day. And, with the odds the way that they are, you take the spot you get wherever it is, because, you could go through the match again the next year and not get into anything. And, if you don't have anything to do for a year, you wind up having to take an internship somewhere that's, maybe in general surgery or internal medicine, something that you really isn't what you're interested in, So, yeah, that's the way that system works. That's how we wound up that's how I got into medical school in Texas. Then I wound up in Oklahoma because of that match system. And then after you do your residency, you can either go out into practice which you're fully licensed at that point. You taking your board tests, or you could go on and do a fellowship, or in some cases they're still called residencies, but it's extra training in a very specific area usually. So popular fellowships would be kidney transplantation, oncology or urological oncological surgery, male infertility was a big one at the time. There were other things that you work with a true experts in those fields for an additional 1 to 3 years to get that extra. And some of that often will be basic science research in a lab, which is what I did. I did 1 year of basic science research at the University of Pittsburgh, and I did 1 year of kidney transplant fellowship where I was a clinical guy, and then I started into kidney transplantation practice at a hospital system in Pittsburgh, right in the same city I was doing my training in. And it happened to be in a group that my wife had already joined as a urologist. So, and that's the only job I ever had after I finished training was that. So, and then I retired in 2019, and after I thought, well, when I retire, I'm going to read all those books that I wanted to read. So I read all those books. I just need something else to do, and that's when we opened up the brewery. So I cultured homebrewing along the way. I was a lot more active when I was in residency and homebrewing back in Oklahoma. You have a little bit more time when you're a resident. It doesn't sound like you have time when you're a resident, but you actually do, because then when you go into practice and you're the bottom line for everything and you're working all the time, you have no time. But so I brewed a lot when I was in residency, and then it became a little bit less frequent after that. And then eventually I started it up pretty strongly again. I won one competition at my local homebrew. We have a local homebrew club here called TRASH. That stands for Three River Alliance of Serious Homebrewers. It's perfect for Pittsburgh, honestly. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. You have to be a Pittsburgher to understand that, but I've been here long enough now that I feel like I'm a Pittsburgher. And it's not derogatory to say trash, but Three Rivers Alliance of Serious Homebrewers is perfect for Pittsburgh. And I won a Pilsner competition, the only one I ever participated in. And now that we brew like professionally, I haven't done a homebrew batch since, really. In fact, I sold all my homebrew equipment to a young man that was very interested in. He got quite a good deal. I had several $1,000s in pretty sophisticated stuff. I was doing lagering in a fermentation, specifically designed fermentation tank for home brewing. And I had a glycol jacket on it and a glycol machine and pumps to run it. And it was pretty damn sophisticated for a homebrew operation. And I sold him all my stuff, several $1,000s worth of stuff for $500. And I get text messages from him every time he's brewing. He sends me a picture of a batch of beer he's got going. So I feel good about that. I kind of passed the torch, the home brewing torch on to a younger person. So
that's good that you're giving forward, because, at some point, if somebody had come to you and be like, all right, here's all this, like you said, very sophisticated equipment for this amount of price, like your head probably would have exploded. Like, there's no way.
Yeah.
There's got to be a catch.
We had home brewing back in the day when it first started. We didn't even have a homebrew shop when I first started brewing in my city. So, I bought a sack of grain from a malt producer, and they sent it to me, and it was 50 pounds. I thought, well, what in the world? I'll never go through all that. And, I used old glass water bottles for fermenters, and I used my gumbo pot to boil it on the stove. It really was now